My best friend invited me to a wedding to be a babysitter, but my husband gets to watch the wedding. I was so happy to see a wedding invitation in my mailbox. I pulled it out and a little note fell out on an index card, but I looked at the invitation first. It was truly beautiful, and I immediately stuck it to my fridge like the work of art it was. It was addressed to my husband and me, and I was beyond stoked. I love weddings. I tend to get teary-eyed and smile until my face hurts at the joy of new beginnings and all the love. I was even a wedding singer. That's how much I love them. I picked up the note card and read that, and while my husband was invited, I'd be in another room helping to babysit all the children there with several other female invitees. There's a special room for children at the church, and that's where I'd be, for everything. I'd still need to dress for a wedding in case I wind up in any photos, but I'd be taking my reception meal with the children, and I'd be with all the kids for the ceremony. Then there was a link for their gift registry. Oh, and the meals for my husband and myself would be $100 each, and we have a link to pay it when we digitally RSVP. The first problem here is that I am disabled at 50 years old. Legally. I use oxygen. I use a walker when I need to walk long distances. I sometimes have to give up the walker entirely and use a wheelchair. I'm not proud of it, but there it is. I could happily sit in a room and look at kids, but I'd be pretty useless to prevent a fall or stop a child from choking or anything else that would require me to move quickly. Second, my husband isn't the one who has been friends with these people since childhood. I am. Why would he be invited to watch the ceremony and be part of the reception, but not me? My husband said he'd happily watch the kids and let me attend the wedding and reception, but the invitation specified that only other female invitees would be watching the kids, so I doubt they'd let him. Is this a normal thing at weddings now? Do you pick guests to babysit other guests' children? Should I call them up and explain my health situation even though they already know it and visit me during my multiple hospitalizations a year? I hate having to pull the health card, but honestly, what were they thinking? I confess that I feel offended and hurt that I'm nothing more than a babysitter to them who is expected to pay for my supper and babysit for free. Would I be wrong to simply tell them we won't be able to attend and to find another sitter? And if we don't go, do we still send a gift? Updating to address some questions. I know these folks because my mom, R.I.P. Mom, and the bride's grandma were besties. So I grew up with the bride's mom as an almost sister to me. We went to school together, graduated together, worked at the same place twice, and have been super close since. The bride is like a goddaughter, and at least I thought she was. I'm gobsmacked here. The church where they are getting married is a Southern Baptist church. They aren't members, none of us are overly religious, they just liked the venue and booked it. I've never been inside, but it's lovely on the outside, and apparently it has a childcare room that is big enough for a bunch of women and kids to hole up comfortably for a wedding and reception. We're all American. The groom's family is related to my family via marriage, and the bride and groom met at my house at a cookout a few years ago. I've always been way closer to the bride's family, though. I knew that there had been a proposal. I got FaceTimed about 10 minutes after it happened, and my husband and I cried and laughed and wished them well and oohed and awed over their story and the ring. I was expecting an invitation, sure, but not like this. The last time I had lunch with the bride's mom, she told me they're inviting around 200 people, so it'll be a large wedding with, I'm assuming, a ton of children. No, I don't hate kids. I love kids. I would have loved to have kids of my own, but my body just wouldn't do it. It took 2 miscarriages and a stillbirth to finally make me accept that it wouldn't happen for us. We are in the process of adopting 2 young adults that we brought into our home when we found out they were kicked out and homeless at 18. They've lived with us for years, and we're making it legal. They call us Mom and Pop, and we're a family. I'm still considering my options. I've started and deleted multiple emails to the bride's mom. I'm a raw nerve right now, and my tone isn't the kindest. I want to keep it all in writing so there can be no he said, she said. I plan to ask if they incorrectly sent me the note about babysitting, since they know I physically cannot do that. But every inception of the email led with Butaf Donna. So, I need to think about it some more. Update. I spoke to my friend, the mother of the bride, and I'm pretty upset. I've been bawling for most of the day. She called and said that they were getting a lot of backlash from the wedding guests. No one wants to pay $100 for dinner, and only 3 of the women asked were okay with babysitting. I told her I understood that the guests were upset because it's just tacky to 1, be asked to pay, and 2, be told you are invited, but only to babysit. I told her I would not be a babysitter. At all. No. Just no. She got mad and brought up how we were lifelong friends. She said I'd be helping them more by babysitting than I'd be helping by simply sitting in a pew watching. I reminded her that I couldn't physically help at all due to, being legally disabled. She said they completely understood that and expected me to simply supervise the other sitters since they trusted me most. Again, I told her that I felt it was insulting to be voluntold, thanks Reddit for that word, that I'd be babysitting and that I had no desire to do that, especially not dressed in formal wear. Then we got to the truth. She said that she didn't know if I'd be in a wheelchair that day or require a walker. That's fair. I don't always know which one I'll need. She said that they wanted everyone in pews for the wedding video, and me sitting in a wheelchair would make me stick out and ruin video photos. I said, if I need a wheelchair that day, then I can move to a pew, and my husband can put the wheelchair in another room or back in our car. I may not even need it that day. Then she says, well, space is limited in the pews. You would take up the space of 2 people with your purse and oxygen tank. I said, no, I would not. I wouldn't bring a purse in, and the oxygen tank either sits on my lap or between my feet. It's like a little backpack. Then she said, well, having you in oxygen in the photos would be distracting from the other people. And there you have it. Words were exchanged and she hung up on me. I haven't been removed from any social media yet, but I fully expect to be. I already feel awful for being this way at only 50 years old. I didn't choose this. I didn't want this. If she thinks it's awful to having it photographed, just imagine living with it. Which is what I told her before she hung up on me. I'm devastated. Just devastated. Update 2. I'm not in the greatest headspace. I don't think I've ever been less okay, honestly. I did not register to RSVP or communicate with them further until another invitee got in touch with me and said that the mother of the bride, a person I thought of as basically my sister, was bad-mouthing me into the ground. I explained my side, and our mutual friend was livid. They told the mother of the bride and the bride that they were wrong to want to exclude me because I might or might not need a wheelchair and would have oxygen on my face. I could remove the oxygen for photos, they told her. So, the mother of the bride sent me a message saying, and I quote, well, if you're going to be butthurt about the aesthetic we want to achieve and try to turn other guests against us, then you can fucking come and sit in a pew, but not in photos, and we'll try to get the videographer to do edits to the wedding vid too, but I won't forget how you made this difficult for us. I replied, how did I make it difficult other than existing? She replied, you clearly told Biz about what I told you regarding your wheelchair and oxygen, and she's telling everyone else. We're getting a ton of hate. I said. She asked me if I was attending, and I told her no and explained why. I didn't lie to her. I told her exactly what you said. You didn't tell me not to tell anyone your reasons. If they're valid reasons to you, then you shouldn't care who knows. So, I'm now blocked. By the bride, the mom, the dad, and the groom. A friendship I've had my entire life is over. A goddaughter that I helped nurture and care for is just gone now. We paid for the bride's car insurance, gas, and cell phone all through high school and college because we wanted her focused on just her studies and not a part-time job. Her parents got her a car but insisted she work, but her grades fell when she did and we helped her. And this is how they thank us. This is how they repay our kindness. I guess I'm a great friend when I'm giving money, but I'm not good enough to be seen. I've felt like a burden my whole life, and this has set me back so far. I'm just not okay. Brand new update number 3. Apparently my post went sort of viral because it was on Fox News and a site called Bored Panda. A few mutual friends reached out and asked if it was me, and I admitted that it was. They were told something completely different about the situation. The bride's mother told them that I refused to come because of my health difficulties and that I was afraid I would ruin the wedding and declined the RSVP. She even claimed that she had been begging me to attend ever since the engagement happened, which was a bold-faced lie. I am the one who organized and paid for the after-engagement party so they could announce the happy news to everyone, and I was clear to everyone that I couldn't wait to attend the wedding. So I sent screenshots, photos of the invitation, and the note card telling me I'd be babysitting, and then the showdown where I was told I could sit in the pew and just be edited out of the video and would not be in any photos. I also posted it on Facebook and shared receipts there too. Well, what euphoria has officially commenced. Granted, I'm getting this all third and fourth hand, but here's the latest. Word has spread fast. Links to the news article have made it all over the place, and I've been told that the few ladies who had agreed to babysit have backed out and asked if there was something wrong with them that would make them not fit to sit in the pews or be in photos. And I think that's probably the case since 2 of them have unnatural hair coloring and the other has facial piercings. The church that was booked as the venue has been notified, and I'm hearing it's probably not going to happen there because the pastor's daughter is wheelchair-bound after a car accident. He was going to officiate, but now he says he's conflicted about it and the message it would send. My ex-friend and the bride have blown up my husband's phone because I blocked them after this went public. They blocked me first on all of the social media spots, and he let it go on for a few days to see what they had to say. He has blocked them, but the bulk of it is that I'm jealous that I was never blessed with any children of my own, so that's why I'm ruining this for them. I'm hateful and vile and vindictive because I hate them for their clear health. I mentioned that the groom is related to me by marriage, right? That whole branch of the family tree has now divided itself with some on my side and some on the bride's side. The groom hasn't contacted us at all, but his mother did, and told me that I was wrong for sharing personal business and that I need to let the bride have her wedding how she wants it. I don't agree that I did anything wrong here. I can't help that I'm sick. They've made me feel like utter trash that should just be tossed into the landfill. I hurt. I literally ache because of this. So, hi Donna, my ex-best friend and practical sister. If you're reading this, you devastated me. I'm not okay. I don't know that I'll ever be okay again. I invested time and money into both you and your daughter. I gave you both a home when your marriage was messed up and never charged you rent or asked for help with groceries or utilities. For over a year you lived in our home and we paid your way, so you are wrong to treat me this way. My oxygen mask and possible need for a wheelchair should be the last thing on either of your minds. Because what matters most is that I, feeling as bad as I normally do, was still going to put on my best dress, make myself look presentable, plant a smile on my face through my pain, and show up for you like I always have. But I never, ever will again. If people noticed me in your photos at all, it would have been because I had the biggest and most proud of anyone there, and they'd see the love I had for you radiating off the image. You will regret this one day when I'm gone, and you realize that there are more important things in life than a perfect photo. Am I the a-hole for not telling my parents that the event they were missing was my wedding? So I, 27F, have a younger brother, Mike, 21M. He is the definition of a man-child and a mama's boy, always complaining, always expecting others to bow to him. Just, overall, an asshole. Ever since he was born, my parents fussed over him for everything. He's not special needs or had a traumatic birth or anything of the sort. He was just born. And my parents completely discarded me. My mom, 50F, especially. She went from a loving mother to one of those boy moms that people make fun of on the internet. My father, 50M, still showed me love and support, but he's always been too much of a coward to stand up to my mother and let me win at least once. The only one who stood for me was my grandpa, 76M, who always called my parents out on their bullshit and never liked my brother. I remind him of his late wife, my grandma, and we have a very special bond, but he lives on the other side of the country, and I could never see him often. Mike knows our mom prefers him and loves to shove it in my face. Because of this and his behavior, we've always been at odds. He's spoiled, a brat, and an awful human. I can't remember how many times I ended up in trouble for things I did better than him or for things he framed me with. His only talent are his football skills. He won a scholarship to a nice college out of state. My parents didn't spend a dime on my education because apparently my fund had been used to cover expenses after a fire, just for me to discover years later that said money were given to Mike to buy a car and a house. It's at public university that I met Lucas. He was the first person I was really drawn to there. Of course, I met new people who are now my dearest friends, and thanks to them and Lucas, who was my best friend for years before we got together, I managed to move out of my parents' house. Now both Lucas and I are well known in our fields and have very good salaries. Now, to the main issue. Lucas proposed to me a year ago. We're very private people, so we didn't post it on social media or anything, and when I told my parents, they dismissed it with a "that's nice." I'm starting to think they downright didn't listen to me at all. We decided that we wanted a nice but simple ceremony and reception with our friends and relatives. Lucas convinced me to invite my parents and brother, but they never responded to the invite. And whenever I went to visit and began to talk about my wedding, without mentioning it was a wedding, my mom would always speak over me and about my brother's accomplishments and wild adventures. At one point, I got fed up with it and interrupted my mom to tell her that there was an event I was planning to organize, whose date was unmovable. She told me that they couldn't attend because my brother was playing the last game of the season that very same day and wanted them to be there. Of course, this favoritism didn't surprise me. They missed my ballets, shows, and both my high school and university graduation for things about him. At this point, I wanted to be petty. I told both my parents that it wasn't a problem to miss this event, purposely omitted the fact that this event was my wedding, and didn't insist further. Flash forward to a few weeks ago, I got married. It was perfect. My family, Lucas's family, and our friends were all there, and we had a blast. My grandpa was happy to give me away, and it was just perfect. My relatives asked me multiple times why my parents weren't there with us. I was honest and simply said they had my brother's game to attend and couldn't come. They gave me a few looks, and my grandpa was visibly angry for a while, but otherwise nothing strange happened. After the reception, Lucas and I left for our honeymoon and were phone-free for the whole duration of the trip. But once we got back, we discovered that a shitstorm was welcoming us home. I turned my phone on and was unable to even unlock it before a storm of notifications popped up. Most of them were from my mother and brother. Mike called me all sorts of nasty names and insulted me because, apparently, one of my paternal aunts posted the photos of the wedding on Facebook and captioned it with a very obvious dig at my parents, especially my mom, for missing the wedding. The post apparently went viral in my parents' community, and they've been publicly shamed for their mistreatment of me. It also turns out that my grandpa personally visited my parents to go on a tirade to shame my father, his son, to the point of tears. And this seemed to be my father's breaking point, because he was so distraught for missing his only daughter's wedding and for his father's disapproval that he finally rebelled against my mom and is threatening divorce unless she makes it up to me. I think that's the reason why my mom has been spamming my phone with messages, at first insulting and threatening and then downright pitiful, full of begging and pity parties. Now I'm at home with my husband deciding how to approach the situation. Most of my relatives, even those I didn't invite to the wedding, reached out to apologize for what I went through and to claim they had no idea this was happening at home. Can't blame any of my relatives, they all live with my grandpa on the other side of the country or in another state. But my mom's sisters and friends are belittling me for not telling my mom about the wedding because now she's inconsolable at the thought of having missed my wedding. Personally, I think she just claims that to save face, but I'm not sure. The latest messages from my father and mother seem extremely saddened and hurt for missing my wedding. Now my family is divided on three fronts. The majority who is sticking by my side, my maternal aunts shaming me for hurting my mom's feelings, and my maternal grandparents who are adamant that I forgive my mom in light of her atonement. My best friends are telling me not to listen to them. Thank you so much for the feedback and love. It's overwhelming. I'm going to address the popular questions here. I did inform my parents about my wedding. I sent traditional on-paper invites to all my guests and was notified that all invites had reached their addressees. I did not receive any answer from my parents and Mike, a few very distant relatives, and some people on Lucas's side. I did reach out to all of them through message to double-check, and those who hadn't replied told me they couldn't come. I asked my parents and brother via text, but they didn't respond. I was left on red. Knowing them and given all the things I had to plan, I didn't bother insisting. I didn't repeat the date of my wedding because I had already been told there was my brother's game. Plus, every time I insisted on highlighting my celebrations to get an answer, I was always told that it wasn't that important and to not be pissy and a bother. Because some things were simply more important than me. At this point, I think it's fair for me to not insist anymore. It's not worth the effort. I didn't keep my wedding a secret. I avoided telling my parents that it was my wedding to see if they would be interested in the slightest, but surprise, surprise, they weren't. Despite this, I did openly talk about my wedding with my aunts and uncles. My mother was in the room with us a few times when I discussed venues or dress shops with my aunt, the FB Post 1, but sometimes Mom was on the phone and other times she was just chatting with other people. She never paid attention. When I talked about it during reunions, she smiled and said, "That's great, dear," and then would change the subject. Radio silence on Dad and Mike. I kept in contact with them because, well, all the times I tried to go NC in the past years I've been harassed. I tried after my HS bachelor's and master's graduations, to which they never bothered to show up for reasons involving my brother. Every time I was shamed for daring to turn my back on family by my parents, my brother, my maternal aunts, and my maternal grandparents. I think the turning point here is that all those times Lucas wasn't by my side. We started dating a little after my last attempt at going NC. And how that I have him here. I feel more confident in my stance. But before that, I want this confident. As I already stated, all my paternal side lives on the other side of the country and wasn't aware of how they treated me. I did try to expose my parents once, at 14. My aunts, uncles, and grandpa reprimanded them. They faked being sorry. And then once home, I got the beating and gaslighting of my life for lying. After that, Elle kept in contact regularly with my paternal side, but omitting my parents' abuse out of fear, which TBH still haunts me to this day. Only Grandpa knew, but he was always threatened to be alienated from me if he tried anything. My parents and I are not from the same city. I live in a city an hour drive from my parents' small town, and they don't know my new address because once, my brother tried to break in my apartment to steal some cash and my mother backed him up, claiming that siblings share their goods. Now I moved, and I'll be sure not to tell them where I live. My parents didn't buy my brother a car and a house before he even started high school. They bought him a car for his 16th birthday and a house near his college when he began freshman year. They didn't spend the money of my fund right away. They just lied to me to use it later for my brother, keeping it stored for later in the meantime. Update. Things have been a little crazy this past week. I got off of Reddit for a couple of days to gather my thoughts. Then I had a lengthy conversation with Lucas about how to proceed. He's been my rock, and I don't think I could ever love him more than I already do. My parents were always a taboo topic, but he hit me with a brutal reality check that I absolutely needed. We reached the conclusion that the fact I kept in contact all this time, stuck around and couldn't go NC, isn't healthy. I've realized that the reason I never fully went NC was that deep down I just wanted their approval, even now for once. Pathetic, I know. But it's like a drug, being with my parents. They can be loving, funny, caring, and warm until they're not. The little love they give makes you crave for more, and you want their approval so badly you destroy yourself. But that's enough. I promised myself that things are going to change. I've thought about it and decided to start therapy and to go NC with all those who made an issue about this situation for good this time. After the days dedicated on reflecting on how I feel, I ended up messaging my father to tell him that if he wanted to talk, I would meet him, Mom, and Mike in a neutral location the following day. He immediately replied and agreed, and we met at the park. My father's sisters and brother accompanied us for damage control. My father looked distraught and as if he had been crying for a while. My mom looked the same, but I think it was more out of anger and embarrassment. My brother looked annoyed. I told the three of them about how their behavior and preference in regards of my brother always hurt me, and that their abusive behavior made me realize that I didn't want contact with any of them again after that meeting. My mother tried to cut me off multiple times, but my aunt, the one who posted on FB, shut her up every single time. When I asked them why would they treat me this way, they didn't know what to say. My father kept crying and apologizing without giving me an answer, and my uncle reprimanded him for it. My mother seemed as if she was asking herself that for the first time, but well, in the end she just said that she simply disliked me. Plain and simple. And my brother? He just liked the attention and making me miserable as some kind of sport. I went on with my questions. When I asked why they never responded to my invite, they claimed to have never received one. I showed them the texts, but they denied receiving them. And well, it turns out that they hadn't in fact received my wedding invitation. When it arrived to their house, they weren't there. The only one in the house was my brother, who had come visiting for the weekend. He saw the invite and, as many of you guessed, ripped it up and trashed it. And then, when I texted my parents, he deleted the messages. Wasn't hard to do. According to him, they kept my chat archived and didn't get the notification. So my parents never actually got a formal invitation. I was just distraught. I asked Mike why would he do that, and he just shrugged and claimed that it wasn't as important as the stuff they had in program anyway. I had to stop Lucas from punching him in the face. Strangely enough, my parents were upset and started reprimanding him. He actually began to throw a tantrum and cry crocodile tears, and I must admit that I was kind of satisfied. But then my mom claimed that all was resolved, there was no need to fuss over a misunderstanding, and it was time for me to clear their name. That set me off, and I interrupted her, telling her that they weren't forgiven at all, that just because Mike trashed the invite, it didn't mean it automatically canceled all their neglect out. Plus, all that time it was still very obvious that I was having a wedding, and they should have asked about it. You want to know my mother's response? She said something along the lines of, "I did hear you talking about a wedding of yours, but I just thought you were being delusional and seeking my attention with exaggerated scenarios." She was convinced Lucas didn't actually like me, nor would ever marry me. When I tell you I was about to trash her face, do you believe me? Another thing came up. It turns out that my brother didn't have a football game to go to at all. My parents used the fact that my husband, friends, and I know little to nothing about football. We prefer soccer. And the fact I stopped asking about it when Mike would mock me during his time in high school to make up a story to avoid my event. At the time I wrote the OG post, I couldn't confirm or deny the presence of a game because my brother has private social media and Lucas and I are blocked, and I foolishly trusted my parents' word. But no. You want to know where they went with that man-child? They went to Disneyland because Mike wanted to go. They used the football story to cover for my brother's 100th tantrum holiday, and apparently they did it multiple times in the past months. At that point, I was just completely burnt out and overwhelmed by this amount of information. The fact that I had been fooled this badly, that I was so gullible, genuinely made my blood boil, and I snapped. I stood up and told my father he was a sad, weak man, unable to stand up for his kids unless his wife approved of it. I told my brother he was a little dipshit, a poor excuse of a man that will not accomplish anything in his life, and that he'll always live like the leech he is, babied to the point of uselessness. And to my mom, I told her that she was the worst narcissist, pathetic little woman on the earth, that she didn't even deserve to be addressed and judged for her irrelevance. That not even God could help her out because she is just too rotten. Harsh, I know. My mother shot up from her seat to scream at me halfway through my rant to her, but I was just too mad. I shouted at her to shut the fuck up and sit down and listen for once. She got so mad it felt like steam was coming out of her ears. I don't remember much after that, just that I kept talking. And talking. It felt as if all my anger and hurt just flooded out. At one point, I'm pretty sure the whole park was silent. I spat at my parents and Mike that I was disowning them all, and that if they're smart, they'll think before reaching out again. I took my purse and left with Lucas, Anna, and Francis, leaving my parents and brother at my aunts and uncle's mercy. I think at some point the reality of what I had just learned and said finally hit me, because I ended up having a panic attack on the way home. Lucas was driving, so Anna helped me through it until we stopped in a parking lot to calm me down. I am beyond grateful for their help. Once home, I just fell on the bed and went to sleep. I really wanted to go with you guys' advice and post the whole thread on FB, but given my work and career, I couldn't expose myself like that. One thing is sharing my story from an anonymous throwaway on Reddit. The other is on FB with my name and face plastered everywhere. I couldn't go down that path. Instead, I did something better. I made a folder with all of my mother's insults, messages, and awful comments, and sent it to the woman in charge of my mom's church. It's a tight-knit community my mom worked her ass off to enter in, but that is also extremely judgmental, and being shunned by them is a death sentence. And well, that's exactly what happened. Just like clockwork, the scandal spread like wildfire, going out of the church and reaching the rest of the small town. You can imagine what this means for my mother and father. Because of my little spill, I did find other messages from my maternal side of the family, belittling me even more for upsetting their sister or daughter and insulting her. I just didn't care anymore at that point, so I followed you guys' advice and told them that from now on, they will no longer be part of my life, and that they can talk shit all they want. I just won't care. Instead, they should be grateful I don't send their nasty texts to their employers and spouses. I blocked every single one of them, grandparents included, on everything. I did find a lengthy message from my father. He apologized for not being strong enough to face my mother, agreed that what I said was true, and couldn't believe that he had lost so much of my life because of her. He told me he is going to divorce her no matter what my decision will be, because he is tired of being controlled. He would like a relationship with me to make up for all the years that passed. I did reply to him, to tell him that as of now I really don't want to see him or forgive him. He has replied that he'll try his best to win me back and that he loves me. I replied back that, as of now, I find that hard to believe, and then blocked him too. Frankly, his slimy way of trying to have an out from this situation by throwing my mother under the bus is pathetic. At least she was hateful and owned up to it. He is only able to blame others for his choices. I don't want to surround myself with people like that. My mother and brother are blocked similarly to my maternal side. Mike wrote other messages to taunt and insult me, and I just blocked him. My mom threw herself a pity party for being shunned by her community and for her marriage going into shambles, and I just replied good riddance before blocking her too. As for my grandpa, he has decided to stay with us for a while, to stick by my side. He really is the best and has read some of your comments. He isn't going to admit that he's flattered by them. Since then, a few days have passed and all has been quiet. Lucas is spoiling me rotten, and I'm starting therapy soon. I know this isn't the drama-filled, revenge-full update you hoped for. But well, this is it. I'll let you know if anything changes or evolves.